The place was called Maple Junction, a narrow brick diner wedged between a laundromat and a tire shop on the edge of town. It had the kind of old counter every firefighter in the county had leaned on at some point. Steel trim worn dull, stools that squeaked, a grill that hissed steady from open to close. Evan Mercer showed up a little after 8 a.m., hands still cold from the November air. No uniform, no radio, just a hoodie, jeans, and the kind of easy posture a man has when he finally has a morning with nothing on the calendar. He'd just come off a tough shift. 2 medicals, 1 rollover, and a chimney fire that smoked half the night. Breakfast here was his reset button. He took a booth near the front window. Steam fogged the glass. The smell of bacon and bleach hung in the air. A waitress poured him coffee without asking. She knew the routine. Evan wrapped his hands around the mug and felt his body settle for the first time in hours. Behind the counter, the kitchen worked its usual rhythm. Metal tapping, pans sliding, 2 cooks talking low. Nothing unusual. Just the hum of a place that had opened every day for 32 years without scaring anyone. But around 8:22, Evan heard something that made his shoulders tighten. A pop, then a sharp, fast hiss. Too quick and too hot to be steam, too controlled to be a dropped pan. He knew that sound, a grease flare. Small ones happened all the time, but this had weight to it. He looked up. No one else reacted. The waitress kept writing down an order. The couple by the wall kept arguing quietly about a dental bill. Everything looked normal, except for a thin line of gray drifting from the service window. It was faint, barely visible, but it wasn't the white, harmless haze from cooking. This had density, texture, the kind you only see when oil hits the right temperature and starts a chain reaction. Evan slid out of the booth, calm but focused. "Everything all right back there?" he called toward the kitchen. One of the cooks, a guy in his 20s wearing a ball cap, poked his head around the corner. He looked annoyed at first, then confused. Then, when he turned back toward the grill, worried. Another pop, then a low, rolling whoomp that every firefighter on Earth can feel in their ribs. The lights flickered. A wave of heat pushed through the service window like someone opened an oven door too fast. Customers finally started to look up. "Ma'am," Evan said to the waitress, "don't panic. Just hold on a sec." He stepped toward the swinging kitchen doors just as the ball-cap cook stumbled through them, coughing. "Fire on the line," the cook said, voice tight. It jumped. Customers started to murmur. Chairs scraped. Someone near the door said they smelled something burning. Evan raised a hand, steady and loud enough to cut through the noise. "Everyone stay seated for a moment. Don't crowd the exit, just stay calm." He pushed into the kitchen. Heat smacked him immediately. Dry, concentrated, rising fast. A stainless steel prep table blocked part of the view, but he could see the main source. A deep fryer glowing under the hood, flames curling over the lip and rolling upward into the ductwork. The fire wasn't massive yet, but it was aggressive, hungry, pulsing in steady breaths. Grease fires didn't wait around. Once they climbed into a vent, they could run the length of a building. 2 employees coughed near the back corridor, trapped behind a wall of heat. Evan scanned for an extinguisher. One hung near the door, small, dry chemical, probably overdue for replacement. It wouldn't knock down a vent fire, but it could buy seconds. "Anybody still back there?" he called. A voice answered, high and shaky. "We can't get out. The heat. Stay low," Evan said. "I'm coming to you." He grabbed the extinguisher and pulled the pin. He knew the hallway behind the kitchen, a narrow path lined with storage shelves and a mop sink, had only one exit, now cut off by the heat. The fire was already licking across the wall tiles following the duct above. He moved through the kitchen fast but controlled. No turnout gear, no gloves. Just a sweatshirt and instincts honed by years of training. He swept a burst of powder at the base of the flames long enough to dull their reach, then angled himself into the corridor, head down, arm up to shield his face. "Keep talking," he said. "Where are you?" "By the delivery door," someone answered. "We can't see." He pushed deeper, eyes watering. The smoke was still at mid-height but climbing. Boxes crackled somewhere behind him. The extinguisher was already losing pressure. He wasn't going to put this fire out. Not alone, not with this tool. His only shot was pulling people out before it flashed over the hallway. He reached them. 2 workers crouched low, terrified but uninjured. A man in his 50s and a teenage girl wearing an apron streaked with flour. "All right," Evan said, voice firm. "Hands on my shoulders. Stay low. We're moving now." He turned them toward the kitchen. where the glow was getting brighter. He had seconds, maybe less. Evan moved first, crouched low, one arm sweeping the air ahead of him to feel for heat pockets. The hallway had tightened with smoke since he'd entered. The fire behind them was growing louder, an uneven, snarling hiss that rolled into the ductwork and rattled the metal above. "Keep your heads down," he said, steady but quick. "Stay right on me." They followed close. The girl's hands trembled against his shoulder blade. The older man coughed hard, stopping once as if he might lose his balance. Evan reached back, grabbed a fistful of the man's sleeve and pulled him along. They reached the kitchen doorway just as a fresh wave of heat punched through from the fryer line. Flames had climbed to the underside of the hood now, pushing outward in long streaks. The room was turning orange, each reflection bright against the steel surfaces. "Go straight to the dining room," Evan told them. "Don't run. Don't stop." They stumbled out through the swinging doors. A few customers had stood, confused and anxious. Others looked frozen, not sure what was happening. The waitress tried to guide people toward the exit but kept glancing back at the smoke building in the kitchen. Evan didn't have time to reassure anyone. He turned back toward the line. The extinguisher in his hand sputtered. The gauge was buried in the red. He aimed at the base of the fryer anyway, letting out the last few bursts. The white powder clouded thick, briefly muting the flames, but the fire regained its strength almost immediately. The hood system, if it still had any charge, hadn't deployed. He scanned the ceiling. The duct above the fryer was glowing faintly, a dull red under the metal skin. That was bad. If the fire reached the roof, it could run the length of the building before engines even got on scene. He needed to buy time. Evan backed into the dining area, coughing hard enough that spots flashed in his vision. A couple of customers rushed past him toward the door. The cold air from outside spilled in, carrying scattered voices, someone calling 911, someone yelling to hurry up. The waitress approached him, eyes wide. "There's still someone in the office," she said. "The manager. He was doing inventory. I didn't see him come through." "Where's the office?" Evan asked. "Back right corner of the kitchen, next to dry storage." He knew the layout roughly, but that corner was the worst possible place. A dead end behind the main heat path. Smoke was already boiling under the kitchen ceiling. If the manager hadn't gotten out by now, he was in real trouble. Evan pulled the hood of his sweatshirt over his head and wrapped the bottom of it across his mouth. It wasn't real protection, but it was something. "Get everyone outside," he told her. "Don't let anyone come back in for anything." She nodded, finally letting her fear show. "Please be careful." He pushed into the kitchen again. The temperature had jumped. Fast. The kind of fast that meant ceiling tiles were starting to cook. The grease fire had spread along a shelf of oil bottles, turning the metal prep table into a channel for heat. Flames climbed the wall, snapping in tight, angry bursts. The duct above roared like a jet engine sucking in air. Evan stayed low, almost crawling now. Visibility had dropped to a couple of feet. He kept his left hand on the wall to orient himself, moving through smoke so thick it felt like pushing through wet fabric. "Hey!" he shouted. "Office! Can you hear me?" Nothing. He moved deeper, past an overturned crate, past the mop sink he'd glimpsed earlier. The office door stood partly open, dark inside except for a faint glow from the emergency light above the desk. A figure slumped against the far wall. Evan rushed in. Heat pooled near the ceiling, pushing down in suffocating waves. Smoke curled around the man's face. Mid-40s, glasses, limp but breathing. His head lolled when Evan touched his shoulder. "Hey," Evan said, tapping his cheek. "You with me? Come on, I need you awake." The man groaned, eyes blinking slow. "Fire," he mumbled. "Yeah, you're gonna stand up now." Evan pulled him upright. The man's legs buckled immediately, but Evan hooked an arm around his waist and hauled him out of the office, dragging his feet along the tile. The hallway back toward the dining room was gone. A curtain of fire now chewed through the center of the kitchen, fed by cooking oil spilling across the line. The heat forced Evan back. Going through that path wasn't possible anymore. He scanned for another route. Any route. The back door? The delivery entrance. It was close, maybe 20 feet behind him, if it wasn't blocked. He pivoted, half carrying, half dragging the manager toward the rear of the kitchen. The air back there was slightly clearer, but the smoke was rising quickly. His legs burned. His lungs screamed for clean air. He felt the sharp sting of heat biting through his sweatshirt where embers drifted. He reached the door, shoved the crash bar. It rattled, but didn't move. He shoved again, shoulder down, putting everything he had into it. Still stuck. Something heavy was braced against the outside. Maybe a delivery cart, maybe a misplaced pallet. The manager coughed weakly against him. It jammed earlier. I meant to fix it. Evan cursed under his breath. The fire behind them hissed louder. He had seconds to figure out a new plan. Evan stepped back from the jammed door, breathing hard, staring at it like he could will it open. The metal around the frame felt warm, hot enough to warn him that the fire was starting to wrap behind him. The kitchen lights flickered again. A ceiling tile to his left sagged, then dropped, hitting the floor with a wet smack. He tightened his grip around the manager's torso. "Stay awake," Evan said. "I need you with me." The man nodded weakly, but his head slumped again. Smoke curled across his face in thin gray ribbons. Evan looked around, scanning fast. The room had started to pulse with heat, those small shifting waves firefighters notice right before a space goes hostile. He could feel the hair on his arms prickling, not from fear, but from the temperature shift. He moved toward a metal shelving unit stacked with cans and paper boxes. If he could clear the lower shelf, maybe he could wedge himself close enough to the door to get the right angle. A shoulder strike wasn't going to do it. He needed leverage. He leaned the manager against the lowest shelf, bracing him like a sandbag. "Don't fall," Evan said. "Just sit tight. 2 seconds." He crouched, planted his feet, and drove both hands against the door. Nothing. He tried again, this time pushing low near the latch. The bar flexed. The frame groaned. He backed up a foot, lowered his stance, and hit the door with everything he had. The pallet outside scraped an inch. Not enough. The fire behind them cracked loud, an unmistakable sound of something structural failing. The whole kitchen seemed to exhale, sending a hot draft down the length of the floor. Evan turned back, eyes stinging. The fire had jumped the central prep table and reached the stacks of cardboard takeout boxes. They ignited instantly, sending a column of flame up the wall. A rolling wave of heat pressed forward, driving the smoke lower. It was going to flash soon. He didn't have minutes. He had maybe 30 seconds. He grabbed the manager again, hooked his arm under the man's armpit, and dragged him toward the door. Evan braced his back against the metal and planted both boots on the pallet gap. "Come on," he muttered, voice rough. "Move." He pushed, legs shaking from effort. The pallet shifted a little more. He felt cool air slip through a thin opening, brushing his cheek. A start. He adjusted, pulled the manager tighter, and drove his legs forward again. This time the pallet slid enough for the door to open 6 inches. It wasn't much, but it was life. Evan shoved his free hand through the gap, grabbed the pallet, and yanked it aside just enough to force a wider opening. He kicked the bar again, and the door snapped outward, letting in a cold rush of morning air so fresh it made his lungs ache. He dragged the manager through the gap and stumbled onto the concrete delivery pad outside. The air felt like winter water, sharp, clean, unbelievable relief. Behind him, a heavy boom echoed inside the kitchen. A flashover. The entire room had ignited in a single sweep. Evan kept moving, pulling the manager farther from the building. The man sagged to the ground, coughing violently but breathing better in the clean air. A voice shouted from around the corner. 2 employees from earlier ran toward them, eyes wide, terrified. "Oh my God," the girl said. "We didn't know if you—" "Call out if anyone's still inside," Evan said, catching his breath. "We think everyone's out," the older employee said. "People went out the front. We counted maybe 20. We weren't sure if he pointed to the manager. "He's breathing," Evan said. "Stay with him, keep him upright. If he stops talking, shake him and keep him awake." In the distance, sirens finally rose. 2 engines, maybe 3, coming fast. Evan stood, hands on his knees, letting the cold air scrape his throat clean. His sweatshirt was scorched along one sleeve. A patch of fabric near his elbow had melted into a hard, shiny blister. His hair smelled like burnt insulation. His face felt raw from heat exposure. The girl stared at him, shaking. "You went back in there twice." "I was closest," he said, voice tired but steady. The engine swung into view, tires spitting moisture off the pavement. Maple Junction was already taking heavy fire from the kitchen side, flames rolling up through the ventilation chase toward the roof. Evan stepped back, giving space as firefighters poured off the rigs, pulling hose, forcing the front door, sizing up the structure. He recognized 2 of the guys from his own station. their helmets marked with familiar numbers. One of them spotted him through the smoke and did a double take. "Mercer!" the captain shouted. "What the hell happened?" Evan pointed toward the back. "Grease fire. Vents took it. I've got 3 out, 1 semi-conscious. No turnout gear, no radio." The captain looked him over, scorched clothing, reddened face, then nodded hard. "Sit down," he said. "EMS is coming around. Don't stand there and fall over." "I'm fine," Evan said. "You look like a baked potato that lost an argument." Evan snorted, a weak laugh breaking through. He walked toward the curb and sat on the cold concrete, letting the adrenaline drain just enough for the shaking to start. Small at first, then stronger. The kind that comes once everything is finally out of your hands. The captain walked up again, kneeling beside him. "You did good," he said quietly. "Could have been a fatal structure fire without you." Evan didn't answer right away. Smoke billowed above the diner, drifting low across the lot. The sound of hoses thumped against the ground. Glass cracked inside the building. Radios barked orders. Finally he said, "I was just trying to get breakfast." The captain smirked. "Next time, pick a place that doesn't serve danger on the side." Evan let out a long breath, staring at the rising plume. The sirens faded into steady work noise behind him. Evan sat with his elbows on his knees, head down, letting the cold air cool his face. His pulse was still running too fast. Not from fear, but from the drop-off that always came after a hard push. The manager sat a few feet away, leaning against an employee, wrapped in a blanket someone had pulled from an engine's medical compartment. An EMS crew approached Evan. 2 paramedics he knew well, Diaz and Renner. Both had been on the job long enough to skip the small talk. Diaz crouched in front of him. "Let me see your hands." "They're fine," Evan said. "Yeah, I hear that every shift." Diaz reached out anyway, taking Evan's wrists and turning his palms upward. The skin was red, shiny along the knuckles, but not blistered. "Superficial. Lucky. Lift your chin." Evan did. Renner shined a small light across his eyes, then stepped back. "You breathe any heavy stuff?" she asked. "Some. Not enough for a mask." "You sound rough." Kitchen was hotter than it looked. They exchanged a glance. Diaz pulled a small pulse ox from his pocket and clipped it to Evan's finger. The screen blinked, settling at 95. "You're good," Diaz said, "but you're not leaving until we're done with you. Sit tight." Evan nodded, knowing the routine. He'd done the same thing to 100 off-duty firefighters who insisted they were fine after stepping into something they shouldn't have. The fire companies worked steadily across the parking lot. Engine crews had stretched lines to the front and rear, feeding water through the kitchen and pushing fire back from the roof chase. A ladder truck positioned itself on the street, raising its aerial. The whole scene moved with the familiar rhythm of a working fire, the kind that wasn't going to collapse the structure, but demanded respect. Customers from the diner stood shivering near the curb, wrapped in jackets or blankets. Some had given statements to police. Others just watched, stunned, realizing how close they'd come to being trapped in that narrow dining room, with no idea what was happening behind the kitchen doors. The waitress drifted toward Evan, rubbing her arms against the cold. Her hair was frizzed from sweat and smoke. "You okay?" she asked him. "I will be," Evan said. "You saved my co-workers, and the boss." She looked toward the manager, who was sitting up straighter now, still coughing, but alert. "He doesn't even remember trying to get out." "He probably got hit with the first push of smoke," Evan said. "Happens fast." She nodded, swallowing hard. Her voice tightened. "I saw that flash in the window. The whole kitchen just lit up." "Grease fires go vertical in seconds," Evan said. "Didn't help that the vent system didn't dump. That hood should have gone off." "Yeah," she said, looking down. "We've been having issues with it for months." Evan didn't say anything. Not his station. Not his investigation. But he knew what that meant. Cut corners, deferred maintenance, the usual problems small restaurants ran into when budgets got tight. The captain walked over again, helmet off, hair damp with sweat. "Kitchen's knocked down," he said. "Roof's got some damage, but it didn't run the whole length. You buying lottery tickets on the way home?" Evan shook his head. "Never had much luck with those." "You had some today," the captain said. His eyes scanned Evan's face. "You sure you're solid?" "Yeah." "You're shaking." "Adrenaline dump, I'll be fine." The captain rested a hand on his shoulder. "You kept this from becoming a recovery. That's not nothing." He walked off to coordinate with a battalion chief arriving on scene. Evan looked back at the building. The brick exterior was stained black around the kitchen windows. Steam and thin smoke drifted from gaps in the roof. Hoses ran across the lot in long, heavy arcs, water pooling in shallow streams near the gutter. The manager finally caught his breath enough to speak. He shuffled over with help from an employee. I didn't get to thank you," he said, voice raspy. "You pulled me out of there. I don't remember much." Evan shook his head. "You were just caught in the worst spot. Anyone would have been." The manager's eyes were glassy, part exhaustion, part something heavier. "I should have kept that back door clear. I knew it stuck, I just didn't get to it." Evan didn't let him off the hook, but he didn't pile on either. "Fix it when you rebuild. You're alive. Take the lesson seriously." The manager nodded, looking at the scorched building. "We'll be closed for a long time." Evan didn't answer. He wasn't the insurance guy, the inspector, or the contractor. He was just the one who'd been sitting down for breakfast at the wrong time, or the right time, depending on how you framed it. Diaz returned with a small bottle of water and handed it to Evan. "Drink, slowly. Don't be a hero now." Evan cracked the bottle, took a long drink, and felt the cold slide through him like relief. "You need a ride home?" Diaz asked. "I drove," Evan said. "Yeah, and you look like you just crawled out of a barbecue pit. Let somebody drive you." Evan smirked. "I'll be fine in a bit." Diaz raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. A firefighter from another engine walked by and clapped Evan on the back. "Off duty, huh? You guys can't turn it off for one damn second." Evan managed a tired smile. "Bad timing. Or good timing," the firefighter said, heading back toward the rig. Evan let the noise of the scene fade into the background. Radios, engines idling, the hiss of water striking hot metal. It was familiar, comforting in a strange way. A reminder of the life he'd chosen, the job that never really ended just because you clocked out. After a few more minutes, Diaz did a final check and cleared him to leave. "If you feel dizzy later, go get checked. No tough guy stuff." "Got it." Evan pushed himself to his feet. His legs steadied after a moment, the tremors fading. The air smelled like wet ash and burnt metal, memories he'd carried for years and would carry for years more. He looked once more at Maple Junction, the place that had served him hundreds of breakfasts, the place he'd nearly died in that morning. He walked to his truck, opened the door, and paused before climbing in. His stomach growled. He sighed. "Guess breakfast'll have to wait." He started the engine and pulled out of the lot, the plume of smoke shrinking in his mirrors as he drove away, tired, sore, alive. The next morning, Evan woke to the stiff, grainy ache that always showed up after a long night at a fire. Except this time, he hadn't even been on the clock. His sweatshirt from the day before sat crumpled in the laundry room, still carrying that mix of smoke, scorched fabric, and whatever chemical powder hadn't washed out in the shower. He poured coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and let the house stay quiet for a while. No alarms, no radios, no engines rolling out. Just him, the morning light, and the faint echo of heat pulsing through a kitchen he never should have been inside. When his phone buzzed, he expected a shift change text or a reminder about training. Instead, it was a picture sent from one of the guys on the engine, showing Maple Junction in daylight. The building looked tired but recoverable. The roof above the kitchen was tarped. The windows were boarded. Yellow tape wrapped the perimeter. The caption under the photo just read, "You had yourself a morning, Mercer." He shook his head and set the phone down. Later, he drove back into town. He told himself it was just a swing by the hardware store. But he took the long way, and the long way just happened to pass Maple Junction. A couple of inspectors were out front. A fire marshal walked the side alley, pointing at the ductwork with a clipboard in hand. No one stopped him as he parked across the street. The waitress from the day before spotted him first. She stood beside her car, arms folded against the cold. When she waved, it was small, hesitant, like she wasn't sure if she should interrupt him. He crossed the street anyway. "You didn't have to come back," she said. "I was in the neighborhood," Evan replied. She gave him a look that said she didn't buy a word of it, but she appreciated the effort. "They said the vent was clogged pretty bad," she said. "Grease built up all the way up into the duct. Probably hadn't been cleaned properly in years." Evan nodded. "It happens more than people realize." The manager walked toward them, slower than normal but upright. He carried a folder full of papers and insurance forms. His face was still pale around the eyes, the kind of look people get after they've seen how close they came to the end of their story. "I talked to the marshal," he said. He He said if you hadn't gotten people out when you did, it would have been a mass casualty. The flashover hit 30 seconds after you cleared the corridor. Evan kept his hands in his jacket pockets. Timing worked out. No, the manager said quietly. You worked it out. He reached into the folder and pulled out a simple thank you card, handwritten, edges still clean. We all signed it, he said. Doesn't cover what we owe you, but it's something. Evan took the card but didn't open it. He didn't need to. The weight of it was enough. A pickup pulled into the lot. One of the cooks, wearing the same ball cap from the morning of the fire. He stepped out, spotted Evan, and walked over. You got us out, he said. I've been thinking about that moment all night. I didn't even know the fire jumped that fast. I didn't know anything. That's why training matters, Evan said. Kitchen fires are fast. Grease makes everything worse. You guys didn't stand a chance back there. Don't beat yourself up. The cook nodded, jaw tight. A light breeze carried the faint smell of burnt wood and chemical foam from the building. It wasn't strong, but it was enough to pull everything back. The heat, the hallway. The manager slumped on the floor, the pallet blocking the door. All of it. The waitress glanced at the boarded windows. They're gonna rebuild, she said. Insurance says it'll take a few months. Maybe more. You'll be back, Evan said. She shrugged, but there was hope in it. He stayed a few more minutes answering their questions, listening to their retellings of moments they'd experienced only from the dining room, moments he'd seen from the other side of the smoke. Then he excused himself with the simple honesty of a man who'd had enough attention for one lifetime. Take care of each other, he said. As he walked back to his truck, the fire marshal gave him a small nod. Professional, respectful, the kind of acknowledgement firefighters exchanged without needing words. Evan drove off, leaving Maple Junction behind him. The boarded windows shrank in his mirror, the yellow tape rippling in the breeze. He wasn't a hero. He didn't want to be one. He was a firefighter, off-duty or not. And sometimes the job found you, even when all you wanted was a quiet breakfast and a cup of coffee that didn't get cold.